1950s and early 1960s was an era in time of immense change. It was the great dividing barrier between the age of conformity and the greatest period of social revolt in memorable history. It gave rise to the civil rights movement and birth to the hippies. It was an area that planted the seeds of discontent that many hoped would grow into the trees of progress. The public began to ask questions of authority and push the envelope of conventional thought. In the coming years, segregation would be erased from American society and man would walk on the moon, but none of it could have been possible without planting these seeds.
This nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
One of the most pressing issues of the time was the civil rights movement, led by Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. The movement for desegregation and rights of non-white Americans gained national attention in 1955 after Rosa Parks, a 42-year-old seamstress, stood up for her rights by not giving up her seat on the bus. But one of the most moving scenes of the civil rights movement occurred during the 57-58 school year in Little Rock, Arkansas. 9 African American students attempted to attend Little Rock High School and were met with insults and hatred.
They moved closer and closer. Somebody started yelling, "Lyncher! Lyncher!" I tried to see a friendly face somewhere in the crowd, someone who maybe could help. I looked into the face of an old woman, and it seemed a kind face. When I looked at her again, she spat on me.
The governor of Arkansas even called in the Arkansas National Guard to keep the black students out. He said blood would run in the streets if black students attempted to enter the school. However, President Eisenhower, enforcing the federal court's decision on desegregation, sent the 101st Airborne Division to escort and protect the students on their way into the school. This was a major turning point in the battle for civil rights because it showed that authority could be used to support the struggle for equality instead of to combat it. The era would eventually end in a victory for African Americans and all minorities in America. The nearing of the end of the struggle was marked by the legendary "I Have a Dream" speech made in front of the Lincoln Memorial by the great civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. in 1963. Sadly, this man would be assassinated, but his legacy would live forever.
Yeah. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Yeah. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Say it again, y'all.
By late 1959, America was becoming involved in the conflict in Vietnam, which would become the longest American war ever fought. It was fought between nationalistic and communist forces in the north and imperialistic forces in the south. In the early stages of American involvement, the government kept most troop deployment highly secretive, not even clearly informing the soldiers themselves, and it quickly became an unpopular war after it became public. The war in the following draft eventually became so unpopular that it spawned one of the greatest countercultural movements the world has ever seen, the hippies. The hippies were a group of people with extremely anti-materialistic and pacifist values. The hippie movement began in the early 1960s, growing out of the beatnik movement, but putting heavier emphasis on drug use, spirituality, and music. The movement caught on quickly in America and then spread throughout the industrialized world. The hippies took a very strong stance against the war in Vietnam and the draft. The hippies would go on to become a household word and ride the wave of anti-war sentiment to become a powerful subculture, but would quickly die out after the end of the war.
We copy you down, Eagle.
Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Roger, Tranquility.
Man had been conducting experiments in space since the advent of rocketry during World War II and has dreamt of reaching the stars since the dawn of humanity. But this dream did not become an exciting possibility until the late 50s and early 60s when man finally mastered the ability to survive in space. After the launch of the Soviet satellite Sputnik, America quickly created a new committee on space exploration technology, NASA, in order to combat the red threat of space superiority. Beginning in 1959, the administration began working life support capabilities using animals, primarily primates and mice, as test subjects. All of the early tests ended up in death of the subject, but thanks to their sacrifices, NASA was quickly able to perfect the systems for life support and craft re-entry. On February 20th, John Glenn became the first American to successfully orbit the Earth. This was the first great achievement on the American side of the space race, although it had already been matched by the Soviets. Although they trailed behind for almost a decade, America was able to win the space race and claim a Cold War victory. This could not have been achieved without the ingenuity and bravery given to the Mercury Project during the early 1960s. With the seeds planted, America would go on to create a truly American age, where young people beat back the forces of old and ancient dreams were realized. Without the planting of these seeds, the tree would never have sprouted and the greatness of America may have never blossomed.